February 3rd, 2014, the day after the Super Bowl, 33-year-old Aaron Thomas went to work, like many of us did that day. Within 1 hour of arriving at his place of employment, he was dead. Shot in the neck by his coworker, this man, David Reese. Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, during the course of this trial, the people will prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt that on February 3rd of 2014, here in the city of Kingston, County of Ulster, State of New York, this man, the defendant, David Reese, intentionally caused the death of another person, Aaron Thomas. Members of the jury, you will hear that on February 3rd of 2014, Aaron Thomas arrived at work at approximately 6:01 a.m. He worked the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, and has been stationed in the Kingston location at 71 Smith Avenue, here in the city of Kingston, County of Ulster, State of New York, for over 3 years. He was a maintainer. He worked in maintenance. And he shared an office and a workshop with another individual by the name of George Williams and this man, the defendant, David Reese. On February 3rd of 2014 at approximately 6:17 a.m., Aaron Thomas began rounds throughout the building with a checklist, which were part of the duties of the maintainers. He was gone for approximately 12 minutes. At 6:22 a.m., this man checked into work. And at 6:28, he entered the area where the office and the workshop that he shared with Aaron Thomas was located. At 6:29, Aaron Thomas came back from his round. But he didn't go straight to the office. He went to the boiler room first. And he exited the boiler room at approximately 6:32 a.m. Aaron Thomas went back to the office and deposited the clipboard that he had used for his rounds. And at some point crossed the hall to the maintenance shop. At 6:44 a.m., this man, the defendant, David Reese, called 911. And when asked what the nature of his emergency was, he stated, "I shot a man." The defendant went on to recount to 911 where he was located, 71 Smith Avenue at the DEP building, who he was. His name was David Reese. Who the deceased was. It was Aaron Thomas, another employee. And that he was in the maintenance shop, and that Aaron Thomas wasn't working. Members of the jury, you will hear the defendant told 911 that he shot Aaron Thomas because he believed Aaron Thomas had broken into his home. But you will hear that the defendant also told 911 that he lives in Gilboa, New York, and that this burglary had already been reported to the Schoharie County Sheriff's Office. The defendant told 911 that he brought a gun to work, specifically a .45 caliber, that he confronted Aaron about this burglary and shot him twice in the neck. While on the phone with 911, the defendant walked upstairs to the DEP Police Department. He knocked on the door. The door was answered by Captain Justin Kite. The defendant turned, lifted his shirt, and displayed a black handgun. Captain Kite took the black handgun and placed it on a shredder just inches away. Captain Kite then took the phone, briefly spoke with 911, and learned that this defendant had just admitted shooting a man in the maintenance shop. Upon hearing that, Captain Kite took a step forward. The defendant was still in the hall, and in doing so allowed the door to shut behind him and lock, separating them from the gun. Captain Kite began to walk with the defendant, and the defendant told him, "Aaron's been breaking into my stuff, stalking me." And when asked what that was about, the defendant told Captain Kite he shot Aaron. Captain Kite escorted the defendant out of the building where he was met by members of the Kingston Police Department. The defendant was taken to the Kingston Police Department. His clothing was taken from him, which appeared to be covered with blood from the waist down. A pistol permit in his name bearing his photo was on his person. And the defendant was photographed, and other than 2 minor scrapes, had no injuries, and was not bleeding. Captain Kite went back into the DEP building to look for Aaron, who he knew to share an office and a maintenance shop with this man. And when he got to the maintenance shop and opened the doors, he saw the man he knew to be Aaron Thomas lying on the floor. Captain Kite, accompanied by another police officer, Ryan Schumann, went back up to his office and turned the gun that he had obtained from the defendant over to the Kingston Police Department. Officer Schumann took it out to his car, locked it in his car. He made it safe first, removed the bullet from the chamber, and then locked the gun and the bullet in his car until it could be turned over to members of the forensic investigation team from the New York State Police. We will hear from Investigator Kevin O'Keefe, an investigator of the New York State Police Forensic Investigation. He will describe to you the scene of the workshop, and he will tell you it contains many things, tools, supplies, but it was very orderly. Everything was in its place. And when he entered the room, he saw a board partially stained, with a can of stain and a paintbrush resting neatly beside it. The only things that he observed that were out of place were the body of Aaron Thomas, a trail of blood drops leading from where the board was being stained a few feet away to the body of Aaron Thomas, and 2 cartridge casings that he located on the ground near the body of Aaron Thomas. He will tell you he swabbed the blood on the floor, he collected the cartridge casings, and he was present when the body of Aaron Thomas was packed to take to Kingston Hospital for an autopsy the next day. Investigator O'Keefe will tell you he was present at the autopsy the next day when Aaron's clothing and personal belongings were taken from him. Investigator O'Keefe will tell you Aaron had a knife left attached to his pant pocket. And other than that, he was unarmed. You will hear from Dr. Michael Sigarica, who performed the autopsy. He will tell you that Aaron Thomas sustained a gunshot wound just below his right ear, that a bullet traveled through his body, across and down slightly, and lodged in the left side of his shoulder. Dr. Sigarica will tell you that bullet severed Aaron Thomas's spinal cord, causing instantaneous paralysis and death. Dr. Sigarica will tell you that Aaron Thomas also had an abrasion to his forehead, which is consistent with a fall after a gunshot wound. And he will tell you that Aaron Thomas had a laceration at the top of his scalp. Dr. Sigarica will describe this laceration as a painful but not lethal injury. He will tell you that Aaron probably was stunned, maybe momentarily disabled, and may have bled, as he would tell you the scalp bleeds in some ways. And he will tell you that injury was caused from unforced trauma. Members of the jury, you will hear that the clothing obtained from the defendant and the blood drops at the scene, as well as swabs of the defendant's gun, were tested at the New York State Police Forensic Investigation Center in Albany and found to in fact be the blood of Aaron. Finally, members of the jury, we will hear from Maria Rauch, the firearms expert at the New York State Police Forensic Investigation Center in Albany. She will tell you that the weapon obtained from the defendant was in fact bore the same serial number as the weapon on his pistol permit. It was his gun. She will tell you that she test-fired the weapon, and it was in fact operable, meaning it was in proper working order. She will tell you that she analyzed the 2 shell casings obtained from the scene, 2 cartridge cases obtained from the scene. And she will tell you that they were in fact fired from the defendant's gun. And she will tell you that the bullet obtained from the shoulder of Aaron Thomas is consistent with being fired from the defendant's gun, although it does not bear enough characteristics to say so for certain. She will tell you she did gunshot residue on Aaron Thomas, an analysis on Aaron Thomas's sweatshirt. And she will tell you that the fatal shot to Aaron Thomas was fired more than 18 inches from the sweatshirt. Members of the jury, when you have heard and seen all the evidence in this case, I will have the privilege of speaking with you again. And at that time, I will be able to discuss inferences that you may wish to draw from that evidence.
Thanks very clear. Even to the beyond a reasonable doubt of what happened between these 2 men. Mrs. Van Loon told me these 2 men worked together. That's true. They worked together in the same office. But listen carefully to the evidence as it develops. And you will hear that there was, to put it mildly, a strained relationship between these 2 men. And Mrs. Van Loon told me that Mr. Reese believed that Mr. Thomas had burglarized his home. Well, there's more to it than that. She even said that he believed that Mr. Thomas was stalking him. And there's even more to it than that. But what this case is about, the judge told me about in the indictment, is whether, with what happened at the time, it's not whether Mr. Thomas is dead, not even whether Mr. Reese, his gun, fired the shot that caused Mr. Thomas's death. What this case is about are the circumstances surrounding all of that, and whether that shot was fired with an intent to cause death, or whether that shot was fired with some other mental activity going on. In other words, Mr. Thomas stalking Mr. Reese, Mr. Reese believing that he was being stalked, Mr. Reese believing that Mr. Thomas had burglarized his home. Those are the kind of things that placed Mr. Reese's mental state. Was he acting with emotion? Was he acting with extreme amounts of emotion? In essence, it comes down to, was he acting with an intent to kill? That's what he's charged with here. Acting with an intent to kill. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is certain that Mr. Thomas is dead. It is certain that Mr. Reese was involved in causing that death. The question here is, did he come into work that morning? Did he intend at any time to cause Mr. Reese's death? And it will also be my privilege, after all of the testimony and evidence is received, to speak with you again. And at that time, I will ask you to find Mr. Reese not guilty of murder and second degree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera. How long do you anticipate